This module explains the tools that you can use to check that graphical deliverables comply with the CAD and object standards. You will learn how to automatically verify drawings against the standards, what needs to be validated manually, and how this fits in with the overall delivery process. This module will cover what we mean by verification and validation and how these processes can help you, how to get started with the associated tools, what is automatically verified and what will be checked manually, when to undertake these checks during the delivery of graphical deliverables. The CAD and object standards are designed to make graphical deliverables produced by Environment Agency projects more consistent. To make sure that this happens, we need to check that all the deliverables we receive do in fact comply with the rules set out in the standards, to make sure it is reliable when used in the future. The CAD and object standards include some tools that make this process as simple as possible by providing automated checks to verify that graphical drawings and models comply with the standards and streamlining the manual validation required for checks that can't be done automatically. For example, let's say that this hexagon represents a graphical deliverable. We have to check that it complies with the CAD and object standards before it is accepted into the Employer Common Data Environment (CDE). Through the verification process, it is checked against the CAD and object standards and is then successfully submitted and accepted to the CDE. This deliverable will sit alongside other verified deliverables that have been submitted to the CDE. As more information is added to the CDE, we need to make sure that it all fits together. Information that doesn't comply with the CAD and object standards will disrupt the information that does and make the overall asset model less reliable. So by checking deliverables before they're added to the CDE and confirming that they do meet the standards, we can ensure that our asset model only contains trusted information that we can rely on. There are 3 stages we need to undertake to verify that graphical deliverables comply with the standards: automated verification by the user, manual validation by the supplier project manager, and manual verification and acceptance by the employer project manager. A user develops the drawings or models through the design process, using the checker tools within Autocad or Revit to automatically verify the graphical information as it is being produced. At stage or gateway approval, the user generates a standards checker report from the application, which verifies that it complies with the standards. If errors are identified in this report, the user corrects them before running the report again, or notes an exception for any deviation from the standards. Once complete, the user delivers the drawings or models with the checker reports to the supplier project manager for validation. The supplier project manager validates these reports and manually validates the drawings or models against parts of the standards that cannot be automatically checked. Once satisfied, a standards assurance summary report is produced and submitted alongside the graphical deliverable for acceptance by the employer. Acceptance is provided by the employer project manager on satisfaction that the product has been verified. The CAD and Object Standards verification tools can be used with Autocad and Revit software applications. This section covers how to install the plugins and supporting files to enable the verification tools before creating new drawings and models. The Checkup Plugins are Autodesk software components that can be added to the applications to enable verification against a set of standards. The Autodesk Drawing Checker plugin comes pre-installed as standard with AutoCAD and Civil 3D applications. The Autodesk Model Checker plugin is not pre-installed in Revit. Users will need to download this plugin from an external website. Environment Agency users can do this through the Environment Agency Application Shopper via IT Portal icon on your desktop. Non-environment agency users can download the plugin for free from the BIM Interoperability Tools website at this URL address. The Checkup plugins need supporting files to verify drawings and models against a specific standard. The Environment Agency CAD and Object standards include a set of supporting files for both Autocad and Revit applications. Autocad support files include a drawing template configured to the standards. Using this file to generate a new drawing or model will help users adhere to the standards. A checker file containing the key data from the standards which the plugin will use to check against the new drawing or model. A line type file containing additional line patterns to those contained within the template that are compliant with the standards. And finally, a worked example drawing to help with manual validation. New drawings or models can be compared against this example to identify errors or non-conformances. Revit support files include a model template. As with the Autocad, this template is configured to the standards and should be used when starting a new model. A checker file containing the key data from the standards. A Revit parameters file containing the project and data parameters compliant with the standards. And a worked example to assist with manual validation. All supporting files can be found on a site. These files should be downloaded and stored in a central location where those involved in generating graphical deliverables on Environment Agency projects can access them. The supporting files need to be protected and maintained in this location to ensure that drawings and models are verified to the most up-to-date versions of the standards. This section will explain how to operate the Autocad Standards Checker, but first it is important to understand what we are verifying and why. The Autocad Standards Checker automates verification for CAD drawings and models. This is undertaken by the user during production and is completed before the manual validation stage. Take a typical embankment detail that has been produced in adherence to the CAD and object standards. For this typical embankment, we will use the Autocad Standards Checker to verify the correct naming, styles and properties for dimensions, layers, line types and text. What does this look like? The Autocad checker verifies that the dimension styles used in the drawing are compliant with the standards. For example, text size and font are compatible with the annotation type and the drawing scale. Layers are checked to ensure that they follow the correct naming convention and that their properties, colours and line types, for example, are consistent with the standards. Due to the nature of the layer naming convention, the supporting checker file .dws is unable to store the vast combination of fields. Although a layer name may appear as a non-conformance in the checker, this can still be acceptable if the user has adhered to the naming convention in the CAD and Object Standards document. These non-conformances can be ignored during the check and will be highlighted in the report as ignored problems, but validated in the next stage. Similar to dimensions, annotative text properties such as name, size and font are checked to ensure that they are compliant and compatible with the drawing scale. Line types are checked to ensure that naming and coding adheres to the standards. Users can enable the verification tools in Autocad through the following process. New drawing or model files are created using the Autocad template provided in the supporting files. From within the application, the checker file can be linked to the working file. If no checker file has been configured for the drawing or model previously, a message will prompt the user to locate a checker file. Once the checker file is linked, automatic prompts will appear if non-conformances occur during the production of the drawing or model. This automated checker is carried out from within an Autocad drawing or model. Once the drawing or model is ready for submission to the Supply Project Manager for validation, the Autocad Batch Standards Checker is used to generate a report to verify that all checks have been undertaken, and it will highlight where non-conformances occur. Let's take this process through step by step. The internal AutoCAD checker can be found within the application as standard. This is located on the Manage tab, CAD Standards section. To link a standards file for the drawings or models to be verified against, select the Configure command to open a dialog box. From the Standards tab, select the plus icon to assign a standards file. Navigate to where the checker file .dws is located and open. Once assigned, the checker file will be listed in the Configure dialog box, accompanied by a description of the file. The Plugins tab is used to confirm which checks shall be automatically performed. Dimension styles, layers, line types and text styles should all be selected. Once configured, the automated check can be prompted at any time by selecting Check Standards. If the Configure dialog box is closed, the Check button is located on the CAD Standards section of the ribbon. When in the Check or Configure dialog boxes, the checker settings can be selected. These settings do not affect the content of the check, but are available for user preference and allows users to tailor alerts and automatic fixes. The Check Standards commands run through all the drawing or model components, highlighting problems individually and providing a solution where possible. It also allows users to ignore issues where the automatic checker is unable to cover parts of the CAD and object standards. In this example, the check has highlighted a layer that has been created, but the name is non-standard as it does not appear in the assigned standards checker file. We could choose to replace this layer name with one that conforms to the checker file, and a list of layers within the drawing or model is provided. However, in this instance, the CAD and object standards have been followed, so we will choose to ignore the problem. The check will flag this as an ignored problem, and we can choose to move to the next non-conformance. This next check has highlighted the non-conformance of a text style where the properties are non-standard. Several replacements are recommended to fix the problem. In this instance, the error needs to be corrected, so the appropriate recommendation is selected, and we would choose to fix the problem. Once all the checks have been completed, a summary is provided, reporting how many problems were found, those fixed automatically, those fixed manually, and those marked as ignored. This is the end of the internal AutoCAD check. No report is produced, but the problems identified or ignored will carry through to the AutoCAD Batch Checker report. Autodesk also provides a Batch Standards Checker application, which can be used to verify multiple drawings and models at the same time. It also produces a verification report. From the Start menu on computers where AutoCAD applications have been installed, the Batch Checker application can be found in the Autodesk submenu. The Batch Standards Checker looks similar to the internal AutoCAD checker with some additional functions. In the Drawings tab, select the plus icon to select the drawing files to be checked. Navigate to the location where your files are saved, select the drawings and click Open. The batch checker will now list all the files added. In this instance, the external references have been added to the list. However, there is also an option to select to check external references within the drawings if they are not included. The Standards tab has two options. The first option is to check each of the drawings against its associated standards files. This can only be used if the standards file has been associated with the drawing as described in the internal version of the Autocad Standards Checker. The second option is to override any associated standards files or to apply one standards file to multiple drawings, allowing you to verify all drawings against one standards file. Navigate to the Standards Checker file location and open to add the file to the check. The standards for the drawings to be checked against are now listed, and a description of the standards file is provided. The Plugins tab will list the plugins that the checker verifies against. These can be deselected, but should all be selected to perform a compliant check. As with the internal checker, the Plugins tab is used to confirm which checks shall be performed. All categories should all be selected. The Notes tab provides a free text box to provide further information on the checks. For example, errors flagged in the report that are acceptable and in compliance with the standards can be highlighted here. You are now ready to check the files by selecting the check on the ribbon. You will be prompted to save the check file before being able to run the batch check. The check will begin. An overview of the check and any problems found will be displayed in the Progress tab. An automated report is provided at the completion of the check. The report will be in HTML format and has a quick access menu provided to navigate easily to different sections of the report. The overview provides a summary of the drawings that have been checked and lists any problems found in individual drawings, as well as ignored problems. Any ignored problems should only be those that follow the CAD and object standards, but have not been included in the checker file. Drawings that have been checked also have their details listed. The report allows users to display specific sections through the Quick Show menu. The plugin table confirms all the plugins that were used for checking. All 4 plugins should be present. The Standards section of the report displays the details of the Standards Checker file that the check has been verified against. This also lists all the individual styles for dimensions, layers, line types and text styles. The Problems section of the report lists the items that are non-conformances for each drawing and describes what is incorrect. This should be 0 for the verification report to be acceptable. If there is a problem, this should be addressed. The report will highlight the area of non-conformity to make this easier. The Ignored Problems section displays problems that have occurred and the user has flagged as ignore. This will happen when the problem is acceptable as the user has followed the CAD and object standards but has used a style or standard that isn't included in the standards checker file. In this section, we will now look at the Autodesk Model Checker for Revit. The Autodesk Model Checker for Revit automates verification for Revit drawings and models. This is undertaken by the user during production and is completed before the manual validation stage. The Revit Model Checker ensures that models are configured correctly so that they can be accepted into the common data environment. Specific criteria includes file memory size and application version. The check also verifies content in relation to project information and data attribution. The checker report ensures that all the parameters required for project information exist within the file and that the parameters contain a value. The parameters listed in the table shown are the required project information. This table can be found in the CAD and Object Standards document. These parameters are required for the Geocobi Extents tab. The checker report determines whether the file contains the correct parameters required for the data card, ensuring that information is appropriate for the data requirements library. The data attribution parameters listed in the tables shown are required to pass the check. These tables can be found in the CAD and Object Standards document. What does this look like in practice? The data attribution added to a model can be displayed on data cards shown here. This information within the model will be verified to ensure that all data required to pass acceptance has been added. Users can enable the verification tools in Revit through the following process. New model files are created using the Revit template provided in the supporting files. From within the application, the checker file can be linked to the working file. This allows the user to adhere to the standards from inception. Users can produce reports while working on the model to verify that the criteria have been met. This process is the same for multiple drawings or models. Once the model is ready for submission to the supplier project manager for validation, the user can export a report from the checker. Once installed, the Autodesk Model Checker for Revit will appear as a new ribbon within Revit called BIM Interoperability Tools. To link a standards file for the drawings and models to be verified against, select the Setup command to open a dialog box. Select Browse to navigate to where the XML checker file is located. Once assigned, the checker file will be listed in the dialog box, accompanied by a description of the file. Once the checker file has been set up, verification checks can be performed by selecting Run from the BIM Interoperability ribbon at any point during drawing or model production. The model checker will list the current model to be checked. There is also an option to include a check of any model linked to those listed. Other models can be added to the check, and the quick buttons allow users to remove all files and add or remove all linked files. Once the files have been assigned, the report can be run. When the report is complete, a summary box will appear showing the results of the check. This example shows that the report has failed and has listed the areas where the check has passed and failed. The user can identify the elements that have failed and correct this in the model. The report can be copied into an email or Word document or exported as HTML or Excel. Where a check has previously been run in a model, the report will remain saved and can be accessed through the BIM Interoperability Tools ribbon. In this example, the model has passed the check and achieved 100%. All reports must achieve 100% to be accepted. Now that the drawings and models have been automatically verified, they need to be validated. The supplier project manager validates the verification reports and manually validates the drawings or models against parts of the standards that can't be automatically checked. Once satisfied, a standard assurance summary report is produced and submitted, alongside the graphical deliverable for acceptance by the employer. The CAD and Object Standards Assurance Summary Report is a manual validation checklist that will document the verification and validation that has been carried out for drawings and models issued to the employer. If we break this into sections, we can look at what information the supplier has to submit. All the project information is provided in the report, so that it is clear what project the submission is in relation to and the relevant delivery stage. These are manual text fields. The supplier project manager should also verify in the drop-down box that the CAD standards have been applied. The general section of the Assurance Summary Report refers to the automated verification for the submission. The supplier project manager should select the drop-down to indicate that the checker tools have been used and provide the report reference names. These reports should be supplied along with graphical products. The supplier project manager needs to manually check that the files do not exceed 400 megabytes and that the naming convention for the file name is correct in accordance with the project BIM execution plan. Naming must be checked for objects where this cannot be verified automatically. The final section of the report is to confirm a manual verification of drawing frames, textual content, symbology, layering and line work. The worked example drawings are supplied in the pack of supporting files to assist this process. Non-conformances are to be returned to the user for correction and resubmission before formal submission to the employer for acceptance. Now that we understand how to verify and validate graphical data to the CAD and Object standards, this section looks at where this takes place within the overall assurance process that is required when delivering graphical products. There are several stages in the delivery process through which graphical products are developed from: work in progress, shared for collaboration, and shared for stage approval, before being published to the common data environment. These are the fundamental principles of information management covered in the BIM Basics modules. Breaking these stages down into more detail, we can understand where the verification process is required. During the development phase of the stage or gateway, users produce drawings and models. The automated verification checker is active through this phase to flag non-conformances and maintain compliance with the standards. Products are then manually validated by the supplier project manager before being shared to the employer common data environment as status S3 for review and comment by the employer. Through both of these steps, the supplier and employer project managers make sure that subject matter experts are included to perform a check and review of the technical content, in line with the core BIM information management process. This stage is complete once there are no further comments to the product. The next stage in the assurance is S4, shared for stage approval. Users formally verify drawing and model files using the standards checker reports. The supplier project manager validates these reports and undertakes a manual validation of the drawings and models to check the parts that cannot be checked automatically. This is recorded in an assurance summary document for submission with the product for stage approval. The employer project manager shall then assess whether the CAD and Object standards have been adhered to. If the files do not meet the standards or there is inadequate documentation to support their adherence, the employer project manager will reject the submission, and the first steps are to be repeated until the requirements have been met. Once the files have met the standards and the relevant documentation is delivered, they can proceed to accept the submission. Drawings and models are progressed to published by the user. A pre-published validation is undertaken by the supplier project manager before submitting to the employer for acceptance to the employer common data environment. No formal verification or validation processes are required during the publication stage, as no alterations to the drawings and models should occur following stage approval. In this module you have learned what is meant by verification and validation and how these will help you, how to get started, how to install and use the associated tools, what is automatically verified and what will be checked manually, the delivery assurance process for verification and validation of drawings and models to the CAD and Object standards.